Have you ever looked into the eyes of the child you raised and seen a total stranger looking back? A stranger who wants what you have? I am 62 years old. I am retired. And I have just been sued by my own son for owning the very house I bought for him. They thought I was old, weak, and easy to roll over. They were wrong. My name is Margaret Callahan, but everyone who knows me calls me Margot. I am 62 years old, a retired librarian from the Silverwood County Library System, right here in Fairview, Oregon. My life is, or perhaps was, a quiet one. I was on my front porch, enjoying the mild afternoon air, watering the deep red geraniums that my late husband Robert always loved. The metal watering can felt cool and familiar in my hand. The scent of damp potting soil was the only thing on my mind. That's when I saw him. A man I didn't recognize walking up my path. He wasn't a mailman. He wore a nondescript grey polo shirt and dark trousers. He moved with a kind of blank efficiency that set my teeth on edge. He didn't smile, didn't offer a greeting as he stopped at the bottom step. Mrs. Callahan. His voice was flat. I'm Margot Callahan, I said, lowering the watering can. He held out a thick, cream-coloured envelope. It wasn't large, not a package, but it was heavy. Too heavy for a letter. I saw the official-looking seal of the county court embossed on the corner before I even took it. This wasn't junk mail. This wasn't a gas bill. My stomach tightened. He just stood there, waiting for me to take it. He didn't ask me to sign anything. He just handed it over and turned, walking back to his plain sedan parked at the curb. He was gone before I had even processed the stiffness of the envelope. I stood there for a moment, the envelope feeling strangely cold. I ran my thumb under the flap. The sound of the thick paper tearing was too loud in the quiet afternoon. I pulled out the folded documents. My eyes struggled to focus on the dense legal text at the top, but some words jumped out, sharp as broken glass. Plaintiff David Callahan and Claire Callahan, defendant Margaret Callahan. The air left my lungs. Plaintiff, defendant, David, my only son, and his wife, Claire, suing me. I read on, my hands starting to shake so badly the paper rattled. It was a lawsuit, a quiet title action. I didn't even know what that meant, but it sounded sinister. It was coupled with something else, something that felt like a punch, damages for intentional infliction of emotional distress. My distress. No, their alleged distress. Caused by me. They accused me of unlawfully interfering with their quiet enjoyment of their property. They were demanding a court order. They were demanding that my name, Margaret Callahan, be struck from the deed of the house on Elm Street, removed, erased completely. And then I saw the number. The shock of it was a physical blow. They were also demanding monetary damages, $150,000. The words next to it made me nauseous compensation for unapproved renovations that I, the defendant, had refused to fund. The kitchen, the pool, the things I had said no to. I didn't realize I was falling until I hit the porch step. I sat down, hard. The concrete was cold and gritty beneath my thin trousers. The legal papers, the terrible, cream-coloured papers, fluttered from my numb fingers and landed on the toes of my muddy gardening shoes. David? My son? The boy I raised? The man I thought I knew? I looked up, past my own small yard, toward the street. I looked at this house. My house. The one I had downsized to after Robert passed. And then I thought of that other house, the one I had poured my entire life's savings into, every cent I had after Robert was gone, just to give them a start, just to keep them safe. And they were suing me for it. The papers felt impossibly heavy, as if the cream-coloured cardstock was weighted with more than just ink. The house on Elm Street. It wasn't just a piece of property, it was supposed to be their future. A future I had built for them with the wreckage of my own. It all started 5 years ago. My husband, Robert, had passed away after a long, grueling illness. Our large family home, the one we'd lived in for 30 years, suddenly felt cavernous and cold. The silence in those halls was deafening. Selling it was a necessary heartbreak, a final closing of a chapter. The sale left me with my retirement and a substantial amount of savings. I was comfortable, but I was adrift. Around the same time, David and Claire were truly struggling. They were renting a cramped, 2-bedroom apartment above a bakery, and while the smell of bread was nice in the morning, the noise and the lack of space were wearing them thin. Their first child, my granddaughter Sophie, had just been born. David was trying to make his freelance design work stick, but the gigs were inconsistent. Claire was working full-time. They were drowning. I couldn't stand by and watch my only son, my only family, fight just to keep their heads above water. I didn't want my granddaughter growing up in a walk-in closet. So I started looking. I found the house on Elm Street. It was a perfect 3-bedroom bungalow, beige siding with dark green shutters, and a sprawling backyard shaded by an old maple tree. It was sturdy, safe, and in a good school district. It was everything they needed. I sat them down at their tiny laminate kitchen table, Sophie sleeping in a bassinet by the humming refrigerator. "I'm going to buy this house," I told them. "I'm buying it with cash from the sale of the old place. I'm going to put my name on the deed. And David, I'll put your name on it too. That way, you're building equity. It's security." I will never forget the look on David's face. The tension he carried in his shoulders for years just evaporated. He actually wept. Claire rushed to hug me, pressing her cheek against mine. "Margot, you're our angel," she whispered, and I could feel the dampness of her own tears. "We could never, ever have this without you. We'll never forget this." The arrangement was simple, designed for their success. They would live there completely rent-free. It was a gift of stability. The only thing I asked, the only thing, was that they pay their own utilities and cover the annual property taxes. It seemed a small price for a free house. I later found out they hadn't paid the taxes in over 2 years. But that discovery was still in the future. Those first years were idyllic. They were the happiest years of my retirement. We fell into a routine. Sunday dinners were mandatory. I'd come over. David would grill, and I'd teach Sophie how to bake cookies. Soon, their son Liam was born, and I was there, a constant presence, babysitting, helping, being a grandmother. I was knitting a new family together, and the house on Elm Street was the pattern. But now, sitting on my cold porch step, a memory I hadn't thought of in years broke through the surface, sharp and cold. The closing. We were in the sterile office of the real estate attorney, the smell of toner in the air. We were signing a mountain of documents. The attorney, a man I didn't know, looked up over his bifocals. "Now, for the title," he said, looking at David and me. "I see we have you listed as tenants in common. Would you prefer to add a right of survivorship clause?" It just means if one owner passes, their share automatically transfers to the other owner. It avoids probate. I opened my mouth to say yes. Of course. That's what I wanted. The whole point was to leave it to David. It was the logical, loving thing to do. Before I could speak, Claire let out a little, breezy laugh. "Oh, goodness. No," she said, tapping the lawyer's desk with a painted fingernail. "Let's not make things complicated. Tenants in common is just fine. We like to keep things simple, don't we?" "Honey?" David, distracted by the paper in front of him, just grunted his agreement. I hesitated. It felt wrong. But I was the benefactor, the angel. Arguing over legal terminology at that moment felt petty, as if I were putting strings on the gift. So I smiled, and I nodded, and I let it go. Simple. She wanted it kept simple. I understood now. The legal papers resting on my shoes. Simple meant separate. Simple meant my half wasn't legally tied to David's survival. Simple meant it could be severed. It could be sued for. The change was gradual, and then it was all at once. It started, I think, about a year ago, when Claire quit her stable job at the insurance agency. She announced she was launching a new career. She was going to be a lifestyle influencer. I didn't even know what that meant. It sounded like a fantasy, but it turned out to be a poison. Suddenly, the house on Elm Street, my gift of security, wasn't a home anymore. It was a backdrop. It became the set for Claire's endless stream of Instagram photos. I'd see pictures of my grandchildren, Sophie and Liam, not as children, but as props, dressed in matching beige linen outfits in a perfectly curated, sterile-looking living room. The family dinners, once warm and chaotic, stopped. They were replaced by content creation days. The first time I truly felt the chill was when Claire caught me in the kitchen. I was wiping down the laminate countertops, the same ones I had thought were so practical. "Margot, please don't," she said, not looking up from her phone. "That's not your job." "It's just a little spill, dear," I said. She sighed, a sound of profound irritation. "This kitchen is just awful. Margot, it's impossible to shoot in here. The lighting is terrible, and these counters are so dated. It's really hurting my brand." My brand. I had given her a $400,000 house, and she was worried about her brand. Then the emails started. No more quick phone calls. No more dropping by with cookies. I received a message from an email address I didn't even recognize. Some lifestyle name Claire had invented. "Hi, Mother Margot," it began. Not Mom. Not Margot. Mother Margot. "We need to establish some boundaries for our workspace. Moving forward, we ask that you provide at least 48 hours notice before visiting. We need to maintain a professional environment and can't accommodate drop-ins. Thanks for understanding." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. 48 hours. I needed an appointment to see my grandchildren. The real blow came that Thanksgiving. The Sunday dinners had long since evaporated, but I held out hope for the holidays. I called David in early November to ask what I could bring. "Oh," he said. His voice was distant, thin. I could hear Claire whispering in the background. "Actually, Mom, we're not doing a big thing this year. We're just going to rent a cabin. Up in the mountains. Just the four of us. You understand?" I understood. I understood that I was being cut out. I spent Thanksgiving alone, with a frozen dinner and Robert's old photograph. The next day, my friend Evelyn sent me a link. She said, "Margot, you need to see this." It was Claire's public Instagram page. There, posted for the world to see, was a photo album. Our fabulous Friendsgiving. The caption was full of exclamation points. There was my son, David, carving a massive 20-pound turkey. There was Claire, raising a glass of champagne, surrounded by a dozen of their laughing, stylish friends. They were in the dining room on Elm Street, my dining room. The lie was so blatant, so cruel. It felt like a slap. I stopped calling. I stopped trying. I just drove by sometimes, like a ghost, just to see the house I was no longer welcome in. And that's when I saw it. One Tuesday evening, I took a different route home from the grocery store. As I turned onto Elm Street, I saw a large flatbed truck parked out front. Men in hard hats were in the backyard. My heart leapt into my throat. I pulled over, my hands shaking. They were demolishing the back wall. Not the house, but the low brick wall that enclosed the patio. A mini excavator was digging up the grass, leaving deep, muddy scars in the lawn I had helped David plant. I fumbled for my phone and dialed his number. He answered on the third ring, his voice breezy. "Hey, Mum, what's up?" "David, what is happening?" I was trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm at the house. There's a truck here. They're tearing down the wall." "Oh, yeah, it's exciting," he said, as if discussing the weather. "We're putting in a pool." A pool. A massive, in-ground pool. "David, you can't do that?" I said, the words tumbling out. "You cannot do that without my permission. My name is on the deed. David. That's a huge liability. What if someone gets hurt? That's my savings. That's my name." There was a pause. The breezy tone was gone. When he spoke again, his voice was cold, hard steel. A voice I had never heard from him. "It's my house, Mum. Just stop interfering." He hung up on me. After David hung up on me, a heavy, cold silence descended. I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks. I didn't call. I just let the image of that muddy, excavated yard fester in my mind. The construction, I noticed on another drive-by, had stopped. I assumed they had run out of money. I was right. The phone rang on a Thursday morning. It was David. His name flashed on the screen, and my stomach knotted. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Hello?" I said. "Mom, hey. Mom." His voice was an awful, syrupy imitation of the son I used to know. It was the voice he used as a teenager when he was about to ask for $100. It was all fake warmth, a sugary coating over something rotten. "David," I said flatly. "So, I know we kind of got cut off last time." He started, a practiced little laugh in his throat. "Things just got so hectic. But hey, Claire and I have been talking, and we have a really great opportunity. That kitchen. You know." I said nothing. "Well, we found a contractor who can do a total remodel. Marble, new appliances, a huge island, you know. Really bring the house into the 21st century. It'll add so much value. Mum, it's a smart investment. What do you want?" "David." The fake warmth faltered for a second. "Right. Well, to do the remodel, Claire and I are applying for a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. It's a great interest rate. The thing is, the bank just needs all the owners to sign off on the loan paperwork. Since your name is on the deed, they just need your signature." There it was. After the lies, the disrespect, the 48-hour notices, the ruined Thanksgiving, the illegal demolition. After all that, he was calling to ask me to co-sign a loan, to put my retirement, my security, my name on the line for his marble island. My voice was quiet, but it was harder than any steel I had ever known. No. What he said, the sweetness vanishing. Mum, it's just a signature. No, I repeated. The answer is no. I am not signing any papers. I will not sign to let you take out debt on an asset you do not pay for. You haven't paid the property taxes in 2 years. David, I have. You don't pay for the insurance. I do. That house is not a piggy bank for you to smash open because your wife wants a new brand. It is financially reckless, and I will not be a part of it. The silence on the other end was absolute. Then there was a rustling sound and a sharp, piercing shriek that made me pull the phone from my ear. You selfish old woman. It was Claire. She must have ripped the phone from his hand. Her voice was pure venom. You are just a miserable, controlling witch. You just want to keep us under your thumb. You can't stand to see us happy. You'd rather see us fail than have anything nice. I took a deep breath, picturing the librarian's desk I had sat behind for 30 years. I pictured the quiet signs. I found my calm. Claire, I said, my voice measured and low. This has nothing to do with your happiness. That house, the money I used to buy it, is my retirement savings. It's the only safety net I have left. I am not your bank, and I am not your mother. I heard her inhale, a sharp, ragged gasp of fury. You will regret this, she screamed, her voice cracking. You will be so sorry, David. Tell your lawyer to start. Tell him. We are done being nice. We will get it one way or another. My blood ran cold. The word hung in the air, echoing in my ear. Lawyer, I whispered. What are you talking about? Claire. The line went dead. David had hung up, or Claire had. It didn't matter. The threat was clear. 1 week. That's all it was. 1 week later. The man in the grey polo shirt walked up my path, and the cream-coloured envelope was placed in my trembling hand. I sat on that porch step for a long time. The sun began to dip, and the air grew cool. But I didn't move. The shock, that initial icy water in the veins feeling, began to recede. It was replaced by something else, something hot and heavy and sharp. It wasn't grief, it was rage. A cold, quiet, librarian's rage. I did not cry. Crying was for loss. This was for war. I stood up, my knees cracking a complaint. I folded the lawsuit, the cream-coloured paper now creased and damp from my hand, and walked inside. I didn't go to the kitchen to make tea. I didn't go to the living room to turn on the television. I went straight to my small home office, the room that had once been a nursery for David. In the back of the closet, behind my winter coats and a vacuum cleaner, was a stack of old shoeboxes. They were all neatly labelled in my own precise block lettering, Taxes 2010-2015. Robert, Medical. Household Repairs. I reached for the one at the bottom, a sturdy Nike box. The label on the side, written in black permanent marker, read Elm Street. I pulled it out and carried it to my desk. I sat down and placed the lawsuit next to it. Then, I lifted the lid. I was a librarian for 40 years. You don't work in the Dewey Decimal System, in the quiet, sacred world of archives and microfiche, without developing a respect for order. I don't just keep things. I curate them, I index them, I keep everything. David and Claire had counted on my age. They had counted on me being a soft, sentimental old woman. They had forgotten that I am, by nature, a record keeper. The box was a history of their ingratitude, all in chronological order. I pulled out the first file folder, property taxes. Inside were the cancelled checks and bank statements. There it was, my payment to the county tax assessor for this year, and for last year, and for the year before that. 3 years of payments David had sworn to my face he was handling. 3 years of his lies, documented in my own hand in the check register. I set the folder aside and pulled out the next one. Repairs. My hand immediately found the invoice from Apex Roofing. It was from last winter, after that terrible ice storm. I remembered David calling me in a panic. "Mum, there's a leak in the nursery. It's dripping on Liam's crib." I had a crew there in 2 hours. The bill was staggering $12,000. I paid it. From my retirement account. I looked at the paid in full stamp. I pulled out the next file. Insurance. Copies of every check I had written. Every year, for 5 years. To the homeowner's insurance company. The policy that protected the asset. The policy that had my name, and David's name, right on top. My desk was covered in paper. A fortress of receipts. They were suing me for $150,000 for emotional distress, when I had proof I had spent tens of thousands just to keep a roof over their ungrateful heads. But there was something else in the bottom of the shoebox. It wasn't in a folder. It was just a few sheets of yellow legal pad paper, folded in thirds. I unfolded it. The paper was dated 5 years ago, just a week after the closing. It was my own handwriting, in blue ink. At the top, I had written rental agreement, Elm Street. I remembered this. I remembered it all so clearly. I had sat at the new, empty kitchen counter with David. Claire was upstairs with a sleeping Sophie. The house smelled of fresh paint and new carpet. I had pushed the papers toward him. "David? Honey?" I'd said. "I had my attorney's office draft this. It's just a simple rental agreement. It's not for money. It's a $0 lease. It just outlines that I'm the owner, and you're responsible for utilities and taxes. It protects us both, legally. I will never forget it." He laughed. It was a warm, loving laugh. The laugh of the son I adored. He pushed the papers back toward me. "Mum, come on," he'd said, covering my hand with his. "This is us. We're family. I don't need to sign this. I promise you. I will treat this house like it's my own. I will take care of it. I promise." I had felt a little foolish, like an overbearing mother. I was so touched by his words that I'd folded the paper and put it away. Now, I stared at it. The unsigned draft, the unmade contract. He had promised to treat it like it was his own, not because it was his own. This piece of paper was everything. His lawsuit claimed I had given him the house, that I had promised it to him. This draft, in my handwriting, from the very first week, proved my intent. I never intended it as a gift. I intended it as a loan. I was the owner. I was the landlord. And they were, and had always been, tenants. They had made a very, very big mistake. They had forgotten who I was. I packed the shoebox. The next morning, I made one phone call. Not to a lawyer. Not yet. I called Evelyn. Evelyn and I have been friends for 30 years. We met at a PTA meeting when David was in grade school and have been inseparable ever since. But where I am quiet and orderly, Evelyn is blunt force. She spent her entire career as a managing paralegal for one of the biggest law firms in Portland. She's retired now, but the legal mind never retires. It just stops billing. We met at a small, quiet cafe downtown. I didn't even order. I just sat down in the booth, placed the Nike box on the table between us, and slid the cream-colored lawsuit on top of it. Evelyn put on her reading glasses, her face impassive. She picked up the lawsuit. The only sound for the next 10 minutes was the clinking of teaspoons and the hiss of the espresso machine. Her lips pressed thinner and thinner as she read. She turned the final page, placed the document precisely back on the table, and took off her glasses. She looked right at me. "Good Lord. Margot," she said, her voice low. "The unmitigated gall. They aren't just trying to take the house. They're trying to paint you as an unstable, senile old woman." She tapped a paragraph on the page. "Look at this wording. Emotional distress. Interfering with their enjoyment. They're building a narrative that you promised them this house, and now you're too confused or too malicious to remember." "I'm not confused," I said, my voice quiet. "And I have proof." I lifted the lid off the shoebox. I laid it all out on the table, the property tax receipts, the $12,000 roofing invoice, the copies of the insurance checks, and finally, the yellow legal paper with the unsigned rental agreement. Evelyn's eyes lit up. She picked up the roofing invoice. $12,000? You paid this?" "I did." She nodded, a slow, grim smile spreading on her face. "This is good. This is very good. This isn't the behavior of someone who gifted a property. This is the behavior of an owner, a landlord." She seemed to relax for a moment, and I allowed myself a small breath of hope. But then her face hardened again. "This is excellent, Margot, and we will use every single piece of it," she said, tapping the stack of papers. "But you need to prepare yourself. This isn't going to be a simple case of showing receipts. This is family court, in spirit, if not in name. It's not about the law. It's about how well they're willing to lie." "What do you mean?" I said, though a cold dread was already creeping up my spine. Evelyn pointed to a section of the lawsuit I hadn't understood. "This, right here. Promissory estoppel. That's the legal term for a promise is a promise. It's what they're hanging their entire case on." She leaned forward, her voice dropping so the next table couldn't hear. "Their lawyer is going to have them stand up in court, put their hands on a Bible, and commit perjury. They're going to tell a story. Margot. They're going to swear on their children's heads that you stood on the front porch of that Elm Street house, dangled the keys in front of them, and said, 'This house is yours. Forever. A gift.' They will cry. David will definitely cry. And they will say that based on that promise, they built their entire lives, their brand, their future." "But I never said that," I whispered, horrified. "I never, ever said that. I was so clear about my name being on the deed." Evelyn's gaze was steady and utterly without pity. "It doesn't matter." The words hit me. "It doesn't matter what you said," she continued. "It only matters what the judge believes you said. And right now, it's their word against yours. And there are two of them." Before I even had a chance to hire my own attorney, the phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Margaret Callahan." A smooth, polished voice asked. "This is she. My name is Mr. Harmon. I represent David and Claire Callahan." He said it as if he were announcing a new line of luxury cars. "Listen, My clients would love to resolve this matter amicably. They see no reason to drag family through the mud. They've authorized me to invite you to my office for an informal mediation, just to talk. No court reporters. Just family. Evelyn's warning about lies echoed in my head, but I also felt a small, stupid flicker of hope. Just to talk. Just to talk, he assured me. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Can you make it? I agreed. A part of me, the mother part, still believed that if I could just get David in a room without Claire, I could talk sense into him. When I walked into the plush, wood-panelled conference room the next day, that hope died instantly. David was there, but he was not alone. Claire was seated next to him, looking like a predator in a sleek, expensive-looking navy blue power suit. She looked like she was about to close a hostile takeover. David just looked grey. He was staring at the polished mahogany table, refusing to meet my eyes. Mrs. Callahan. Margot, please. Mr. Harmon said, gesturing to a large leather chair at the opposite end of the table. Thank you for coming. Coffee, water. No, thank you, I said. I sat down and placed my purse on the floor. I did not take my coat off. Wonderful. Harmon smiled, showing too many white teeth. He sat at the head of the table, a king in his domain. Now, I want to start by saying, David and Claire love you very much. I almost laughed out loud. The lie was so blatant, it was absurd. They do not want this, he continued, folding his hands. No one wants this. This lawsuit, it's just a formality, a way to get everyone on the same page. They just want what's rightfully theirs, what was promised to them. I looked at David. He flinched, but still wouldn't look up. Claire leaned forward, placing her manicured hands on the table. She was the one in charge. Margot, she said, her voice dripping with false concern. We know this is hard for you. We know you're getting older, and we don't want to fight. So we are prepared to make you a very generous offer, just to make this all go away. She paused for dramatic effect. We are willing to offer you $25,000 in cash for you to sign over the deed completely. You walk away, your name is clear, and we handle the house. It's a clean break. $25,000. I didn't look at her. I looked straight at my son. My voice was low, and it cut through the air-conditioned hush of the room. $25,000, I said, addressing only David. Is that what you think I'm worth? $25,000 for a house that I paid for, a house worth, what, $400,000 today? A house I bought with my own money. David. He shrank. He finally looked up, his eyes bloodshot and weak. Mom, he mumbled, his voice thick. It's the right thing to do. It's fair. You don't need it. You have your own house. We need it. The kids, we need it. That's what broke me. The we need it. The entitlement. The utter, breathtaking selfishness. They weren't just taking the house. They were justifying it as a need, while I was just a greedy old woman with a spare. I snapped. I stood up. The legs of the heavy chair scraped loudly on the floor. Claire flinched. David jumped. Mr. Harmon's plastic smile faltered. I will not be taking your $25,000, I said, my voice resonating with a cold fury I didn't know I possessed. But I will give you an offer. I looked at David. I looked at Claire. You have 30 days. 30 days to vacate my property on Elm Street. Get your things, get your children, and get out of my house. If you are not gone by the 1st of next month, I will be filing for a formal eviction, and I will have the sheriff remove you." Claire's face turned a splotchy, furious red. The mask of calm concern was gone, revealing the ugliness beneath. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, standing up to meet me. "You can't. We'll countersue. We'll tell them." "You will tell them what—" I interrupted. "Tell them what you already have, that I'm an old, confused woman. Go ahead. Try it." I picked up my purse. I turned and looked at the smooth, expensive lawyer. "Mr. Harmon," I said. "See you in court." I walked out of the room without looking back, my head held high, leaving the ruins of my family sitting in that polished mahogany room. The moment I left that conference room, the adrenaline drained away, leaving me shaking but resolute. My first call was to Evelyn, who gave me a name. My second call was to that name. Her name was Diaz, Ms. Diaz. She wasn't an old-school legal bulldog. She was young, sharp, and wore a minimalist black suit that looked more like armor than clothing. Her office was spare, modern, and overlooked the river. I brought the Nike shoebox. I didn't speak. I just unpacked it, piece by piece, onto her glass-topped desk. The tax receipts, the $12,000 invoice for the roof, the insurance stubs, and last, the yellow, unsigned rental agreement. She read the lawsuit first, her face grim. Then, she looked at my evidence. She picked up the roofing invoice and held it up to the light, as if it were a precious artifact. She read the unsigned rental agreement twice. Finally, she leaned back in her chair, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across her face. It was the first time I had felt a genuine flicker of hope since this began. "Mrs. Callahan," she said, her voice crisp. "They have made a very, very big mistake. Evelyn said it was their word against mine, 2 against 1. I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Ordinarily, she'd be right," Diaz said, tapping the roofing invoice. "But this is not a, he said, she said. This is a, she did, and they didn't. You have acted as the sole, responsible owner of this property from day one. You have the receipts to prove it. Their promissory estoppel claim is built on sand. They're claiming you promised them a gift. But this," she held up the rental agreement draft, "proves your intent was the opposite from the very beginning. They're in for a shock." I left her office feeling lighter, but the knot of dread remained. This was still my son. This was still a fight. That night, I was in my kitchen, unable to sleep, staring at a cup of tea I had no intention of drinking. It was late, past 11 o'clock. My ringer was off, but I saw the screen of my phone light up on the counter. Blocked number. My heart hammered. A prank call, Mr. Harmon. I almost let it go, but something made me pick it up. "Hello," I said. There was only static, and then a tiny, fumbling sound. "Grandma?" The voice was so small, so high, it felt like it was coming from a great distance. It was a whisper, terrified and urgent. "Sophie." I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. "Sophie. Honey. Is that you? Are you okay?" "I'm sorry, Grandma. I'm using my friend's phone. I'm at her house for a sleepover." "Oh. Sophie. Sweetheart." I choked on the words. I hadn't seen her, hadn't heard her voice in months. "Grandma, you have to listen." The whisper was frantic. "I heard them. I heard Mom and Dad. They're lying. They were practicing." Practicing. What do you mean, baby? Practicing for court. They're going to tell the judge that you're confused, that you forget things. Mum told Dad to say you got lost driving home from the grocery store. Oh, God. I breathed, sitting down heavily on the kitchen stool. But Dad didn't want to. Sophie's voice cracked, and I heard her sniffle. He was crying. Grandma. I heard him. He said, "This is my mother, Claire. This is wrong." And Mom got so mad. The little girl took a shaky breath, trying to be brave. Mum said that if he didn't do it, if he didn't get his act together, she would take me and Liam, and he would never see us again. She said she'd make sure of it. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't just greed. This was blackmail. This was cruelty. Sophie. But Grandma, she whispered, the urgency returning. I did something. I don't know if it's bad. I was on my iPad in my room, and I recorded it. I recorded them. I don't know how, but I hit the button, and I have it. I have Mom yelling at him to practice his lies. I stopped breathing. The kitchen was silent. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. Sophie. Sophie. You are a very brave girl. You did not do a bad thing, I said, my voice trembling. Can you send it? Do you know how to email it? Can you send it to my lawyer? To Ms. Diaz. There was a muffled sound, a door opening in the background on her end. I have to go, Sophie whispered, panicked. Her mum is coming. The line clicked, and she was gone. The days leading up to the court date were a blur of nervous tension and meticulous preparation. I didn't hear from Sophie again. I had no idea if she had been caught, or if she had succeeded. I couldn't count on a 12-year-old managing to email a secret audio file. I had to assume it didn't exist. I had to proceed as if I only had the shoebox. I met with Ms. Diaz 3 more times. We sat in her glass-walled office, the Nike box on the conference table between us. She was no longer just a lawyer. She was a general. They are going to attack your character, Margot, she told me, her dark eyes intense. They have to. Their legal claim is weak, so they will make this a personal attack. They will try to make you angry. They will try to make you cry. They will call you a bad mother, a failed mother, a vindictive, greedy landlord. She leaned forward. They want you to get emotional. They want you to yell. They want the judge to see an unstable, hysterical old woman, just like they'll describe. You cannot react. You will look at me. You will not look at them. You will answer only the question I ask. You will be calm. You will be polite. You will be the librarian. We let the receipts do the talking. So I practiced. I sat in my quiet house, imagining my son on a witness stand, lying about me. I imagined Claire, her face twisted in that mask of false sympathy, describing how confused I'd become. I held an empty teacup in my hand and forced my grip to stay light. I forced my breathing to stay even. I reviewed my documents until I knew them by heart, the date on the $12,000 roof repair, the exact amount of the 3 years of unpaid property taxes, the specific wording of the unsigned rental agreement. I was arming myself with my own quiet facts. The day before the hearing, I was a wreck. I was pacing my living room, unable to sit, unable to read. Every time the phone rang, I jumped. It was just a telemarketer. Then Evelyn. Then a wrong number. By 4 o'clock, I was convinced I was going to be sick. Then the phone rang again. I saw Diaz Law on the caller ID. My heart leaped into my throat. "Hello?" I said, my voice barely a croak. "Margot," Diaz said. Her voice was perfectly calm, but there was an electric current running underneath it. "I have one final piece of evidence to review with you." "What is it?" I asked, sinking onto the edge of the sofa. "Another bill." "No," she said. "We got it." I stopped breathing. "You got what?" "A new email came to my office inbox an hour ago," Diaz explained, a note of triumph in her voice. "From a Silverwood County School District email address. A very brave 12-year-old. It seems the file is large. It's an audio file." "Sophie," I whispered, tears flooding my eyes. "She did it. Is it usable?" "It's crystal clear." "Margot," Diaz said. "I'm going to play it for you over the phone. You need to be prepared for what you're about to hear." I clutched the phone, my knuckles white. She pressed a button. After a second of static, my son's voice filled my ear, thin and full of despair. "Claire, this is wrong. This is my mother we're talking about." And then, Claire's, no more influencer sweetness, no more false concern. This was her, raw and brutal. The voice of a predator. "I don't care. Do you want the house, or do you want your mother? You just get on the stand. You say she promised it to you. You cry a little. They always believe a man crying over his mother. Just say she's been confused ever since your father died. It's a perfect story." A small, muffled sound. Then David again. I can't. She's not confused. She's sharp as a tack. This is evil." "It's smart," Claire shrieked back. "It's what we have to do. Now. Do you want to be homeless? Do you want me to take the kids and go practice it again? Mom just hasn't been herself." Diaz stopped the recording. "There's 20 more minutes of it, Margot. But that's the core." I sat on my sofa, the phone pressed to my ear. I was not crying. The tears I'd shed earlier had vanished. What I felt was not sadness. It wasn't even the white-hot rage from before. It was a cold, absolute certainty. It was the final, devastating confirmation. The son I knew, the son I loved, was gone, buried under the weight of his own weakness and his wife's ambition. "Thank you, Ms. Diaz," I said, and I was horrified to hear that my own voice was as steady and cold as hers. I am prepared now. We were going to war. The courtroom was small, beige, and smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. The air was thick and still. I sat at the front table, bolt upright, with Ms. Diaz to my left. My shoebox of evidence sat between us. Across the aisle, David and Claire sat with Mr. Harmon. Claire was whispering in her lawyer's ear, looking smug and confident. David just stared at his hands, his face pale and slack. "Mr. Harmon began. He painted a picture of me that I didn't recognize. A confused elderly woman, lonely and controlling, who had made a clear verbal promise to her devoted son, only to maliciously renege on that promise out of spite. He used the words baffled and forgetful. I followed Ms. Diaz's instructions. I stared at the grain of the wood table in front of me. I did not react. Then, they called David to the stand. He did exactly what Claire and the recording had planned. He took the oath, and his testimony began. Mr. Harmon led him through their fabricated story. "And what did your mother say when she gave you the keys, David?" She said. He choked up. He produced a few wet tears, wiping them away. "She said, 'This is yours. Son. Forever. She wanted us to be safe. But she just hasn't been herself since my father passed. She gets so angry, so confused. I gripped the edge of the table. I could feel Ms. Diaz's hand, cool and firm, on my arm. A silent, stay calm. When Harmon was finished, the judge looked at my lawyer. Ms. Diaz, your witness. Ms. Diaz stood up. No questions for this witness, Your Honor? A ripple of surprise went through the room. David looked confused, his practiced tears drying on his face. He stepped down. The defense calls no witnesses, Your Honor, Diaz said. Harmon looked completely baffled. Your Honor, they haven't presented a... That is because... Diaz continued, her voice cutting through his. We are not here to argue about my client's state of mind. We are here to look at the facts. Your Honor, I would like to submit into evidence these documents, which prove my client's intent. For the next 10 minutes, she methodically, calmly introduced my shoebox. Exhibit are the unpaid property tax invoices for the last 3 years, all paid in full by Mrs. Callahan. Exhibit BA paid invoice for $12,000 for an emergency roof repair, paid by Mrs. Callahan. Exhibit C 5 years of homeowners insurance policy payments, paid by Mrs. Callahan. These are the actions of an owner, Your Honor, not a donor. Harmon was shuffling his papers, his face losing its color. And finally, Your Honor, Diaz said, her voice dropping. I have proof of the plaintiff's true intent. This is not a case of a broken promise. This is a case of conspiracy to commit perjury and elder abuse. A gasp from Claire. Harmon shot to his feet. Objection. That is an outrageous. Then you will object to this, Diaz said, holding up a small digital audio player. We have a recording of the plaintiffs practicing their testimony. The judge's eyes narrowed. Play it. Diaz pressed the button. The speakers were tinny, but the voices were unmistakable. Claire's shriek, "Do you want the house, or do you want your mother? You just get on the stand. You say she promised it to you. You cry a little. They always believe a man crying over his mother." The voice echoed in the dead silent room. David, seated at his table, let out a sound. It was not a practiced sob. It was a raw, animal wail of pure despair. He slumped forward, his shoulders shaking in a complete, genuine breakdown. Claire was ghost white. She looked like she had seen a ghost. Mr. Harmon looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, slowly, deliberately, took off her reading glasses. She placed them on her desk. She stared at David and Claire for a long, terrible moment. I have heard enough. Her voice was quiet, but it sliced through the room like a razor. She turned to Mr. Harmon. Counselor, my advice to you is to withdraw this frivolous and disgusting lawsuit, effective immediately. Before I refer this entire file to the district attorney's office for a review of perjury and potential elder abuse charges, Harmon, pale, just nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Then, she turned her gaze on my son and his wife. The entire room held its breath. You haven't just lost a case, the judge said, her voice dripping with contempt. You have managed to expose the absolute rot in your own souls. You took advantage of a mother's love. You lived in her home for free. You accepted her financial protection. And when she finally, rightfully, refused to let you indebt her further, you tried to destroy her. You tried to paint her as senile to steal her last remaining asset. The suit is dismissed with prejudice. Your countersuit for $150,000 is dismissed with prejudice. And Mrs. Callahan, she said, and her eyes met mine for the first time. They were hard, but not unkind. I find that you have every right, and frankly, every reason, to begin eviction proceedings immediately. The gavel cracked. It was over. The room was completely silent. Claire was frozen, staring into space. David was still sobbing into his hands. I stood up. My legs felt weak, but they held me. Ms. Diaz gave my arm a small squeeze. I did not look at my son. I could not. I turned, and I walked out of the courtroom, leaving the wreckage of my family behind me.